Welcome to Oslo. We are here to celebrate the best science and the finest scientific minds. This is the 8th Kavli Prize, every 2 years since 2008, in which we celebrate 3 scientific fields: nanoscience, astrophysics, and neuroscience. Now, the prize is a collaboration between 3 organisations: the Kavli Foundation, the Norwegian Academy of Science and Letters, where we are right now, and the Norwegian government. And on behalf of the government, let me introduce to you the Minister for Research and Higher Education, Ola Borten Moe.
On behalf of the Norwegian government and as one of the Kavli Prize partners, I would like to congratulate all the outstanding scientists with the Kavli Prize for 2022. Science is the pursuit of knowledge about ourselves and the world around us. It shapes the way we view the world and transform our lives. Today, we honor you for your exceptional contributions to science in the field of astrophysics, nanoscience, and neuroscience. I do hope to see you all in Oslo in September during the Kavli Prize week. Congratulations.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a great day for science, and indeed a great day for excellence in science. Welcome to the Norwegian Academy of Science and Letters here in Oslo, and welcome to the announcement of the Kavli Prize 2022. Today we are honoring great scientists in the 3 categories: astrophysics, nanoscience, and neuroscience. The 2022 Kavli Prize Laureates builds on a scientific foundation, providing research that truly benefits today's humanity and casts light on pathways for future discoveries. The late Fred Kavli's own words about the Kavli Prize reflects the core of this scientific award: to honor the science of the largest, the smallest, and the most complex. Now, let's go straight to this year's awardees. We start with the smallest, nanoscience. The Norwegian Academy of Science and Letters awards the 2022 Kavli Prize in Nanoscience to Jakob Sagiv, Ralph Nutso, David Elara, and George Whitesides for self-assembled monolayers on solid substrates, molecular coatings to control surface properties. Congratulations to all 4 Kavli Prize laureates in nanoscience. The Nanoscience Committee is chaired by Professor Bodil Holst, University of Bergen, who is here today and will elaborate on the committee's choice. Bodil?
We interact with materials through their surfaces. The 2022 Kavli Prize in Nanoscience honors 4 pioneers that created molecular-scale coatings for surfaces which enable novel and unique levels of control and engineering of surface properties. Their work transformed surface science and has led to applications that shape our daily lives in areas from medical diagnostics to semiconductor devices. The concept of organized monolayer films was introduced in the 1930s at liquid-gas interfaces, and in 1946, a process of adsorption of monolayer films on substrates directly from solvents was first described. Jakob Sagiv built on these ideas, and in 1980 published work which demonstrated unambiguously that molecules with silane termination groups could yield well-defined covalently bonded monolayer films on surfaces terminated with oxygen. This was a crucial step because most surfaces are coated with a natural oxide layer at ambient conditions. He also showed that different types of molecules could be incorporated within self-assembled monolayers, known as SAMs, to modify or add functionalities, for example, fluorescence.
Initially, I was playing with the long-chain fatty acids that's self-assembled on glass. And then I would say that more or less by chance I came across a bottle of octadecyl trichlorosilane, which looked to me very attractive. It was used in that time in that lab of Hans Kuhn for hydrophobizing glass slides. And then I tried the same procedure or similar procedure that I used for the fatty acids, and then suddenly discovered something new, that I can make a very robust monolayer, which unless the fatty acids, it is not removed from the surface by dissolving in solvents like chloroform. It was also possible, immediately I found that we can make mixed monolayers with one component, which is the organosilane, which binds covalently to the surface, and another compound that binds physically to the surface.
In 1983, Ralph Nuzzo and David Allara demonstrated the first self-assembled monolayers strongly bound to bare metal surfaces. They did this using sulfur-functionalized long carbon chain molecules to create ordered two-dimensional self-assemblies on highly crystalline gold films. They established that SAMs can be characterized by infrared and other optical spectroscopies, and deduced the packing and orientation of the SAMs molecules, including their functional groups. This generated a deep scientific understanding, which enabled the rational design of SAMs with new and specific functionalities.
In 1980, I took a position at Bell Laboratories in Murray Hill, New Jersey, which is where I met Dave. And we were both involved in research work in departments that were interested in polymeric materials. So we were on the materials chemistry side of the lab there in Murray Hill, and we talked about, like, how to do something really interesting related to interfaces with organic materials, and out of those interactions came the idea of using self-organization as a way to construct interfaces that had rational and design properties that came from the form of self-organization that would occur with properly selected amphiphilic molecules.
I was working with people in the computer area of Bell Labs and starting to write my own programs for electromagnetic theory of spectroscopy at photon spectroscopy at surfaces. So that was important to me. Then when I left and came to Bell Labs, I developed a good working relationship with a colleague, Paul Weiss, who was building his own STMs, very sophisticated, and we pushed the measurement of using a scanning tunneling microscope on self-assembled monolayers. And in that process, we started investigating the conduction tunneling of current through molecules, which led us into the whole field of molecular electronics, that is, being able to use a single molecule to conduct and alter the properties of a junction when voltage is applied across it.
George Whitesides and his team were responsible for many innovations which consolidated self-assembled monolayers as a field of nanoscience and engineering. Of particular significance was the introduction of patterning of, with, and using SAMs. With this work, they initiated the areas of soft lithography, microcontact printing, and the use of SAMs as resists in lithographic nanofabrication. All crucial enablers of today's high-tech industries.
And what we tried to do was several different things. One was to make simple electronic structures, that is to say, things that were analogs of transistors, and that worked. They were not competitive with existing structures, but they weren't intended to be. And then somewhat larger structures, typically a few 100 nanometers or a few microns in width, that have proved to be very useful in making biologically functional structures of a variety of sorts. And the method for making those is actually quite interesting. What one does is to take a photoresist, which typically occurs in its unprocessed form as a honey-like liquid, and you pour that over a thin film of typically gold on an appropriate substrate, which is often silicon, a silicon wafer. And then you spin it, which means you put the wafer on a rotating turntable and you rotate this. And what that process of spinning does, a process developed in a number of different places and the basis for much of what goes on in the electronics industry.
SAMs are used extensively in medical diagnostics, pharmacology, biosensors, chemical sensors, printers, electronics manufacturing, paints, solar cells, and batteries. There are more than 10,000 SAMs-related patents, and SAMs have enabled numerous multi-billion-dollar commercial markets. The work of these 4 scientists has transformed the ways that we interact with surfaces at the nanoscale, and in doing so, created and invented new techniques, tools, and an industry of surface science.
Now, from the smallest to the largest, astrophysics. The Kavli Prize in Astrophysics is awarded to research covering a whole span of the field helio and astroseismology. The Norwegian Academy of Science and Letters awards the 2022 Kavli Prize in Astrophysics to Roger Ulrich, Jørgen Christensen Dalsgaard, and Connie Ertz for their pioneering work and leadership in the development of helio and astroseismology. Their research has laid the foundation of solar and stellar structure theory and revolutionized our understanding of the interior of stars. Congratulations to the 3 Astrophysics Laureates. To elaborate on their choice, please let me introduce the chair of the Astrophysics Committee, Professor Viggo Hansten, University of Oslo.
The study of oscillations on the surface of the Sun and other stars couples space science technology with mathematical modeling. Helio and astroseismology involves methods such as time series analysis, pattern recognition, and statistical modeling, while utilizing various fields of physics and chemistry such as thermodynamics, nuclear and atomic physics, and magnetohydrodynamics. The bridging of these scientific fields, starting from the appropriate observational input, allows the extremely precise determination of the physical properties of stellar interiors. Roger Ulrich led the theoretical foundation of the field, while Connie Ertz and Jørgen Christensen Dalsgaard have extended its reach to stars of all masses in various evolutionary stages using both ground and space-based telescopes. Roger Ulrich was the first to show that the oscillations seen on the solar surface can be used to make precise measurements of the characteristics of the interior of our nearest star. Solar, and indeed stellar oscillations contain information on stellar structure. The excellent agreement between solar calculations and observations was, amongst other things, a key ingredient in convincing physicists that the solar neutrino problem could only be solved by revising standard electroweak theory.
My interest in the solar oscillations was started when I found that the results of my fellow graduate student Ed Fraser indicated that the solar surface oscillations were disrupted by convection rather than generated by convection. So there's a standing wave structure that appears to be present, and what I found was that you can determine the frequencies of these standing waves by carrying out an acoustic analysis of the solar atmosphere and interior. Previously, people had thought that the apparently solid surface of the Sun, the photosphere, was a boundary layer that was where the waves were confined. And I found that the waves actually penetrate into the interior, and the standing wave frequencies that you get are dependent on the horizontal velocity or motion of the solar material.
Ulrich continued to lead the field with groundbreaking theoretical and observational programs over several decades. Jürgen Christensen-Dalsgaard further developed the topic of helioseismology and played a major role in the first-generation development of astroseismology. Through the 1980s and 90s, he determined the sound speed profile throughout the Sun, its two-dimensional rotation map, its helium content, and the level of helium settling at the base of the convection zone. Christensen-Dalsgaard saw the great potential of applying this science to other stars in the Milky Way, fully realized with the launches of 3 planet-finding missions, which he participated in. Astroseismology gave rise to sizing, weighing, and age dating tools that have now been applied to thousands of stars in the galaxy, including exoplanet hosts. Astroseismology of cool stars revealed that the core rotation of subgiants and red giants required major fixes in the theory of angular momentum in stellar interiors.
Helio and astroseismology has allowed us to study observationally the properties of the Sun and other stars in great detail. For the Sun, it has provided a benchmark for the properties of stars that we can then use to compare our understanding of how stars form and evolve and test the models that we are making of stars. And then with astroseismology, we have been able to extend that to a broad range of different types of stars. Stars are the fundamental building blocks of the universe in many ways. Stars are where the nuclear elements that make up our world are created. And so by understanding stars and their evolution, we can begin to understand how all the elements that we are made of are created.
Connie Ertz is a leading figure of the second generation of astroseismologists. Her remarkable involvement in observational approaches to astroseismology, both from the ground and from space, has had a very strong impact, particularly for her work on massive hot stars. She's a leader in probing the interaction between pulsation, rotation, and stellar winds. In particular, she developed clever methods to identify pulsation modes in massive stars, opening the door to the modeling of their interiors. Ertz's work has enabled the first quantitative estimates of near-core and envelope mixing, leading to significant improvements in stellar evolution theory.
Well, while Roger and Jörn focused on cool, low-mass stars like the Sun, I've been focusing on more massive stars. These massive stars have way faster rotation. So that means that I have to deal with an extra force when I describe the mathematics of the non-radial oscillations. I have to care about the Coriolis force that is due to the rotation of the star. And because of that, we had to develop a whole new field in mathematical modeling terms, and that is called gravito-inertial astroseismology. So we model not only the motions of the star quakes, but while they are rotating around. And this is really new and brought some insights into interior rotation, but also mixing of the chemistry of the star compared to low-mass stars like our own Sun that have a very different way of rotation in their interior.
Stellar astrophysics has been revolutionized by the data made available from planet-hunting spacecraft, but this has only been possible given the extensive theoretical and observational groundwork done by these individuals and their collaborators. Finally, Connie Ertz, Jörn Christensen-Dalsgaard, and Roger Ulrich have also spent vast amounts of energy training and inspiring the next generations of helio and astroseismologists. We celebrate all three as founder of this cosmically effective tool that has transformed our understanding of the structure and evolution of stars.
From the largest to the most complex, neuroscience. The Norwegian Academy of Science and Letters awards the 2022 Kavli Prize in Neuroscience to Jean-Louis Mandel, Harry Orr, Huda Sogby, and Christopher Walsh, for pioneering the discovery of genes underlying a range of serious brain disorders. Many congratulations to the Kavli Prize laureates in neuroscience. To elaborate, please let me introduce the chair of the Kavli Prize Committee in Neuroscience, Professor Kristine Valhovd from the University of Oslo.
Understanding inherited brain disorders has been made possible by the novel genetic approaches developed by this year's laureates, which in turn has led to improved care for patients and their families. The laureates identified genes underlying brain diseases and developed novel strategies for diagnosis and treatment. Jean-Louis Mandel for Fragile X syndrome, Huda Sogby and Harry Orr for spinocerebellar ataxia type 1, Sogby for Rett syndrome, and Christopher Walsh for some epilepsies and developmental brain disorders. Jean-Louis Mandel is a key contributor to the discovery that a repeated genetic sequence accounts for the pattern of inheritance of the Fragile X syndrome, a major cause of intellectual disability. Mandel showed that expression of Fragile X syndrome depended on methylation of certain sites. His work led to the development of widely used diagnostic tools. Mandel also characterized the protein, FMRP, which binds mRNA and affects the levels of protein expressed in neurons. Understanding unstable repeat expansions has provided a model for numerous neurological diseases.
We had been working for 8 years, from 1983 to 1990, trying to locate where exactly in the genome was this Fragile X mutation. And when in 1991 we started to look with more precision in the place we had located, we started to see, using a technique that allowed visualization of the results on the X-ray film, we started to see anomalies in the genome where we could distinguish the patients with intellectual disability from parents without intellectual disability, but with a risk to have affected children, and from people in the normal population. And so suddenly we could visualize, like on a picture, what was going on in these families, and understand that there was this expansion that of these repeats, and also that this was leading to blocking the expression of the gene. All this could be visualized on looking at these X-ray films.
Huda Sogby and Harry Orr independently discovered ataxin-1, the gene underlying the neurodegenerative disease spinocerebellar ataxia type 1, which causes loss of balance and coordination. Similar to Fragile X, the mutation in ataxin-1 is a repetition of a short sequence of DNA, and a larger number of repeats correlates with the age of onset of the disease. They also discovered that the mouse ataxin-1 gene encodes a DNA binding protein that causes the formation of large protein aggregates in cerebellar neurons, leading to their degeneration. Using a treatment known as oligonucleotide therapy, they showed improvements of symptoms in a mouse model.
I started my career working on a rare balance disorder called spinocerebellar ataxia type 1, or SCA1 for short, and was mapping the gene for this disease in the hope of discovering what caused the balance problem. I learned about Harry Orr, who was also working on the same disease. And lucky for me, we got to collaborate and narrowed that region to about 1 million base pair on chromosome 6. And as Harry and I were marching to find the mutation that caused the disease, we learned that there's some rare diseases like myotonic dystrophy or Fragile X where the repeats, 3 bases in the DNA expand, and as they pass from generation to generation, the disease got worse. And that's what Harry and I saw in our families. So we pooled our resources, divided the million base pair region in half, and we searched for those repeats. And on the same day, on April 8, 1993, we both discover the CAG repeat expansion in ataxin-1. It happened to be in a little region of overlap that we wanted to cover so that we don't miss the potential gene mutation. And that day was the most exciting day when we made that discovery together.
The gene for SEA1 was cloned from humans, and it was done prior to the sequencing of the human genome. So this meant we had to use what are now relatively archaic techniques of genetic linkage, isolating DNA from family members, looking for variation in this DNA, and which of these variations covariated with whether the individual was affected or unaffected. And we call this genetic linkage studies. And the gene was found by virtue of working with cells DNA obtained from family members affected with this disease.
Sogby also discovered the mutations in the gene MECP2 that cause Rett syndrome, which develops in young girls with severe motor and cognitive symptoms. She showed that changes in the level of MECP2, which normally silences other genes, is essential for the normal function of many types of neurons in the brain. MECP2 is one of the first identified epigenetic causes for a brain disorder. Also using oligonucleotide therapy, she found that effects of MECP2 changes in mice could be reversed. Christopher Walsh identified genetic mutations that underlie disorders affecting the cerebral cortex, including adverse sporadic and somatic cell mutations in the developing brain. Many of these discoveries came from one of Walsh's key innovations to study recessive mutations in geographically isolated families. These mutations were found to cause some forms of epilepsy and were associated with some autism spectrum disorders.
What our work has been focused on is understanding genetic disorders that disrupt the development of a child's brain. Things that cause conditions like epilepsy, intellectual disability, or autism spectrum disorders. And many of the genes that cause these conditions are inherited in recessive fashion, where the parents, who are normal, carry a copy of a disabled gene. And if a child inherits a copy of that disabled gene from both parents, they develop the condition. And we found in the old days, when it was very expensive to sequence the whole genome, that the most efficient way to find these genes was to work with families where the parents had a shared ancestor. They might have had a common grandparent, perhaps. Maybe they were first cousins or second cousins. Because here, the effect of these recessive genes is amplified, and they're much easier, technically, to map and to ultimately identify. And so that activity took us into these worldwide collaborations, focusing particularly on countries such as those in the Middle East, where marriage between distant relatives is the rule rather than the exception. And we found that this was a really amazing way of trying to help people in all different parts of the world in ways that were the most technologically feasible at the time.
Together, these 4 scientists uncovered the genetic basis of multiple brain disorders, and in doing so, paved the way to the development of diagnostic tools and improved care for those affected.
Congratulations to all 11 Kavli Prize laureates. Their contributions are truly excellent, and they have all made breakthrough discoveries in their respective fields. It is a privilege for me, as the president of the Norwegian Academy of Science and Letters, to honor those who contribute at the highest level. The Kavli Prize Week festivities will be one of the biggest scientific events in Norway this year. In September, we will be inviting both the 2020 and the 22 laureates to celebrate science in two cities, Trondheim and Oslo. Finally, we look forward to seeing you all here in Oslo in September for the Kavli Prize Awards ceremony. Welcome.